Welcome to another Backyard Professor video series. I'm Kerry Schertz, the Backyard Professor. I'm here in my lovely backyard. I don't know how much you can see, of course, and I'm blocking the screen, but I'm discussing this argument that many critics are putting forth on the internet, that the Book of Mormon has absolutely no archaeological evidence in its favor and no historical evidence in its favor whatsoever. It's completely unconfirmed text. I think that argument's false. Let me present a piece of evidence that shows some very interesting internal coincidences and interesting consistencies with ancient Hebraic law. This is the book Echoes and Evidences of the Book of Mormon, published in 2002 by Farms, the Foundation for Ancient Research and Mormon Studies. Although there's only a little difference between a thief and a robber today, in our day, there was considerable differences between the two ideas, thief and robber, in the ancient Near East and under biblical law. A thief, a ganab, was usually a local person who stole from his neighbor. He was dealt with judicially, and he was tried and punished civilly, most often by a court composed of his own fellow townspeople. A robber, on the other hand, a gadud, he was treated as an outsider, as a brigand or a highwayman. He was dealt with militarily, and he could be executed summarily. The legal distinctions between theft and robbery was recently discussed under the laws of ancient Israel by Bernard S. Jackson, an English barrister, professor of law, and former editor of the Jewish Law Annual. In his treatise, Theft in Early Jewish Law, Jackson shows, for example, how robbers usually acted in organized groups, rivaling local governments, and attacking towns, and how they swore oaths, and they extorted ransom from the people. They were a menace worse than outright war. Thieves, however, were a much less serious threat to society. Precisely the same thing can be said of the Book of Mormon Gadianton robbers. John Welch has discussed these angles in his research in the Book of Mormon. For example, this ancient factor explains how Laban could call the sons of Lehi robbers and threaten to execute them on the spot without a trial. You ever think of that little detail? That's interesting, isn't it? This is how a military officer like Laban no doubt would have dealt with a robber. This is precisely accurate. It also explains why the Lamanites were always said to rob from the Nephites, but never from their own brethren. That would be theft, not robbery. Furthermore, it explains the rise and the fearful menace of the Gadianton society. Remember, they called themselves robbers, the Gadianton robbers, in the Book of Mormon. They're never called thieves. They're the outsiders, you see. Other significant details also emerge. It's probably no coincidence that the Hebrew word for band or bandits is gadud. And the most famous Book of Mormon robbers were known as Gadianton's band. Another very interesting, perfect detail. The importance of this legal ancient tradition in the Book of Mormon is further enhanced by the fact that Anglo-American common law would have provided Joseph Smith with quite a different understanding of thieves and robbers if he was writing from a 19th century perspective. And it's inconsistent in many ways with the dominant usages found in the Book of Mormon. In ordinary American usage, the two terms are nearly synonymous. They mean the same thing, not in ancient Near Eastern law and in the Book of Mormon. If Joseph Smith had relied on the language of the King James Bible for legal definition of these terms, he would have found a confusing state of affairs because the Bible doesn't even use them consistently. It uses the terms thief and robber indiscriminately. For example, the same phrase is translated inconsistently from the Hebrew or from the Greek of Jeremiah 7:11 as a den of robbers. And yet the identical Greek in Matthew 21:13 says a den of thieves, even though Jesus was quoting Jeremiah on that occasion. To say nothing of the fact that thieves do not have dens. In addition, the same word for robbers in the Greek New Testament, lestai, is sometimes translated as thieves who were crucified next to Jesus in Matthew 7 or 27:38. And the other time as robber, this is describing Barabbas in John 18:40. Nevertheless, there was an important ancient distinction between these thieves and robbers that no translator could neglect or should neglect, and which Joseph Smith did not blunder. The usage of thieves and robbers within the Book of Mormon text itself perfectly reflects the distinction found in ancient Israelite society and law. This is another remarkable evidence for the Book of Mormon that refutes the argument that the Book of Mormon has nothing at all in favor of it. That argument is simply false.